Good evening, everyone. My name is Roy Kinsey, rapper and librarian for Teen Services and U Media for Chicago Public Library. And today for our Speak On It series, we have the pleasure of speaking with teacher of writing and Latino literature and author Samantha Mabry. Speak On It is a program series connecting teens and authors virtually to have a conversation about what speaks to us and inspires us to create. We are encouraging all our viewers to ask questions on the live stream, and I will ask Samantha on your behalf during our interview. Samantha Mabry credits her tendency toward magical thinking to her grandmother Garcia, who would wash money in the kitchen sink to rinse off any bad spirits. She is the author of A Fierce and Subtle Poison, All the Wind in the World, and their latest, Tigers Not Daughters. In a stunning follow-up to her National Book Award long-listed All the Wind in the World, Samantha Mabry weaves a magical romantic novel about ferocious sisterhood. I loved this book. Hi, Samantha. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. How's it going?
Oh, wait, what I wanted to ask, it's great, but what
Right.
I wanted to ask actually, because my favorite character who I identify with, I'm Jessica.
Okay.
Jessica hates the question, how are you doing? And so
Right.
I wanted to ask how you feel about the question, and I wanted to ask a day after election, what's the vibe? How are you?
Um, right. How are you doing? I used to have, there was this teacher that I had once, and whenever anyone asked him how he was doing, he always said, it's the best day of my life. Like, and he actually like sold that as an answer, like he's like best day of my life. And I always wish that I could, like, that was my automatic response, that I could mean it, you know?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, today is not the best day of my life. I'm happy to be talking to you all. But also, Jessica is no one's favorite aside from mine and yours.
Really?
Like no one ever says this. No, whenever they ask me which sister in the book is my favorite, I'm always like, it's Jessica, because she is so hateful and mean. And they're like, no, I like the writer. Iridian is everyone's favorite because she's like a bookworm.
Mhm.
But Jessica is my favorite. Um,
I was when I was reading the girls, and I was just thinking about a lot of, I think always about astrology. Uh and I'm a Libra, and if you could give the girls a sign, what would their zodiac signs be?
I'm not really good with zodiac signs. I would think that maybe, um, well, Jessica would be me clearly with the Sagittarius. And I once told a group of people, like people were having a discussion about astrology, and I walked in and they were like, well, what is your sign? And I was like, I'm a Sagittarius. And people like got up and left. And I was like, they didn't even want my energy around them. Because apparently it's very pointy, right? You just like irk people, because of the arrow. The Sagittarius is arrow.
Oh, absolutely, the archer, yeah.
Yeah, so you're just like combative, essentially. That's all I know. That's what I think I know about Sagittarius. And then also might be some kind of little water sign like Aquarius. I'm like acting like that's dismissive, but I'm sure that's a fine sign to be born on.
Mhm.
Meridian, what would he be? I don't know. Do you know? If you know about astrology, you would know more than me.
Mm. Well, I was wrong about this because I wouldn't peg Jessica to be a Sagittarius, although it makes a lot of sense how you described it. I'm a Libra, and I'm like, oh, she just has these emotions that are very, that I can really identify with.
Okay.
Iridian, though, is very passionate. Um, and did you give her a water sign already? I would call Iridian a Pisces.
Okay.
This is,
Now that's a good question. Like then I'm like, did I give them birthdays? No. I wonder. I didn't.
That was just a question that was just burning my soul a little bit while I was
No.
reading. I'm just like, I really loved Jessica. We do have a question though. And one of the questions from our viewers, they wanted to know what inspired you to start writing.
Well, that's a tricky one because I did not, there's some authors who have a pen in their hand always, and when they were very young, they were writing out stories and they sort of always have been doing that. I was always much, much more a reader than a writer. And I was an English major in college, and I knew that I wanted to be an English major when I learned that that was a thing, like that you could read books and talk about them, and that could be a thing. And like as an English teacher, you could then read books and talk about them all the time, forever. And so I was really always very in awe of the writers that I studied, and never in a million years would have thought that I could sort of be one of them. But then when I think it was in graduate school, and I took a class on creative nonfiction, on the essay, like the personal essay, the narrative nonfiction. And I thought that I could do that, like something that we'd read. I was like, that's really interesting. And I feel like I could do it, but I couldn't do it. But that kind of got me started. And then I don't know how, and then after school, I think I just started reading. After I was through with school, I started reading things that I were not ever assigned reading. And so that was like Wilkie Collins, who wrote a book called The Woman in White. But he was a contemporary of Charles Dickens. I read a lot of horror, like Dan Simmons, who's like a real popular horror novelist. And then I was like, well, I can write ghost stories, I can write horror stories, and I sort of could do that. But then I think that I had reread The House of the Spirits by Isabel Allende and the magical realism, and I thought that I could do that. And it was the first time really I was like, I think that I understand what she's doing. And I think I can do it. And this is not to say that I am Isabel Allende, but I can, that was what really kind of motivated me to write the kinds of stories that I currently write.
Sure. I came across you in a video saying that you knew that you wanted to write a ghost story and you knew that you wanted a hyena in it. But then we get the final product that is Tigers, Not Daughters. What advice do you have about the writing and the editing process, or just advice in general for teens or anyone interested in writing their first book?
What I try to do, and so yes, I did know that, for a long time, I really sort of loosely knew that this book was going to be about sisters and a haunted house and a hyena that has escaped from the zoo. And what I do a lot, I'm not a real, sort of like how I was saying, I never wrote a lot when I was younger. I'm not particularly prolific. So I'm not the type of person who would say, like, you got to write every day, you got to like sit down and fill your journal pages, because I think that there is a difference, and I didn't make this distinction, I don't know who did. There's a difference between writing and typing, and a lot of writing goes on in a person's head. And so I do a lot of like thinking through stories while driving, thinking through stories while walking my son in his stroller, just kind of like weaving things together. And so my novels typically start really in pieces. So there'll be maybe hold on just a second. My husband is asking me something. What do you need? He needs the computer so that he can show videos to the baby.
Hi, family.
Hi, everyone. Sorry. Okay. He was like frantically doing this, and I was like, okay. So like pieces. So like I'll write like a scene. Like I'll write a scene that I don't know where it fits, and then I'll write a conversation between two characters. I don't know where that fits. So I do not write in order. I do not plot. I wish that I did, because I feel like people who do just like can write a book real easy. I mean, I know that's not true, but so I think that, writing a book is very hard. Editing it is even harder, but writing the pieces of it can seem like really like fulfilling or successful. Like write that scene about that tree and the person under the tree, and then like maybe in your mind you sort of build threads around that, and the story can take shape. But then the thing is, sometimes the story does not take shape, and then you're like, well, what do I have? I have pieces of something. But then you can recycle those pieces into other stories. So like there's a scene in Tigers Not Daughters where Jessica, our favorite, is in a church, right? She's playing this game called Sardines, which I once did in a church, not like how they did, but I had never heard of this game, Sardines, which is like a version of hide and seek, where instead of finding the person, like one person hides. Did you know this game? Had you heard of this before?
No, never.
Okay. So it's like someone hides and then everybody tries to find them. But what happens is, instead of like hide and seek where you find the person and the game is over, if you find the person who's hiding, you hide with them. And then the next person finds them and they hide. And so basically it's like super scary because everybody is vanishing. And so like there was one person left who's like frantically searching around for like everybody, and everybody's hiding, right? So that scene in the church with Sardines was in like another book, and I like tried to then force it into like another book, and it didn't work. But I was determined to put this scene of playing sardines in a church into a book. And so finally it fit in Tigers Not Daughters, and I hope that it doesn't feel like force fit. I hope that
it was perfect. I loved that scene. I loved the description. I loved Jessica seeing his shoe, and he's calling her and she's not answering John. But of course the conversation with her and Peter, I loved the entire thing. I was so surprised by John, and because we get really into the book before we find out that he's abusive. And I was just so thrown. I hate him. But also, why was it important? Why was it important for you to write a character, a teenage Latina, who was in this unhealthy, manipulative, gaslighting relationship with John?
Right. So John is, there's three, let's just back up slightly. So like there's three sisters, right? Jessica's one of the sisters, but the oldest sister named Anna has died before the novel starts. Mm-hmm. And then so everything takes place a year to the date. And so Jessica, is one of her ways of grieving her sister is to try unsuccessfully to become her sister. So she like takes over her sister's room, tries to wear her clothes, and in this sort of extremely weird desperation thing, takes John, who was her sister's boyfriend. And so I wanted her to be, I'm trying to think of what I'm trying to say. I wanted to have a character who had depth, who was in an abusive relationship. Like I didn't want it to be like, she's weak and that's why she's in this relationship, and because that's not, I wanted to sort of obviously not celebrate, but show that very strong young women can not choose the right person, right? And then stay in it. Like she stays in it for way too long. She keeps like kind of finding little reasons, like he's not so bad, yeah. And just this sort of, because that I think happens, and ultimately like how John ends up is sort of how the novel ends up, like, he's all wrapped into the climax. But I just did want to show that she is a very obviously complicated, very raw and grieving person but she's also strong, but also weak, and because I think that that's really true. And the scene, another scene that I had always wanted to put in a novel, but I don't think that I had experimented with it yet. I think that this is the first time I put it in, was like this moment where she's trapped in the car with him, and she is trying to get him out of her car, and he won't get out of the car. And that happened to me when I was a young person. Like, I had a boyfriend, and it was like right when we were trying to break up, and I was trying to go somewhere, and we were in front of his house, and he would not get out of my car. And I remember this like being so traumatized. Like, he wasn't hitting me. There was nothing aside from him not getting out of the car. And I remember it being just like, I mean, I was full blown freaking out, like screaming in his ear, like, get out, get out. And we didn't break up at that point. I didn't break up with him, and so again, I didn't think that I was like a young person who was always walked all over, but young people make bad choices and stick with them for whatever reason, and so it was just kind of important for me to, again, not at all celebrate that, but at least present that.
Absolutely. I think you did it in such a beautiful way. What is your definition of family, and more importantly, sisterhood?
So I don't have any sisters. And I remember telling this. So I got a early reader of my book was Julia Alvarez, who wrote this book called When the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accents, right? Or How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accents. And this book was really inspired by that book. And she said like wonderful things about it. I mean, I was just like, it was unbelievable, the fact that she read it and had nice things to say. And I remember when we were doing a couple of interviews together when the book came out, and I was like, I don't have sisters. And she was like, what? But I just based these sisters. So I'm an only child, like I have no siblings, but I based these sisters off of my mother and her sisters, like real loosely fictionalized. She comes from a large Mexican American family. She was born in Mission, Texas, which is a border town. And then her family moved up here to Dallas. And her sisters, even now, like, they're not friends. They're not close. They hardly talk. But then they get together, and you can tell there's something that like is really cohering them together. Like, it's very interesting. And so I was just really interested in this idea of sisterhood being a really fluid thing, where, even in the course of a day, they can be extraordinarily supportive and then extraordinarily hurtful of one, and so they do unify somewhat at the end, but then they also like kind of separate right after that. So I didn't want there to be this moment where like, yay, they all come together, and then yay, they're best friends now. It does have a kind of like, they come together when they need to, and then kind of live their separate lives other ways.
Absolutely. Yeah. I could identify with a lot of this. My grandmother fell out of a window when I was young. She didn't pass away like Anna, but I know that your grandmother shaped the way that you see, the way that you write in a lot of ways. And I just kind of wanted to hear you talk about your grandmother and her influence on the way that you see and create.
So, so this is the sisters that I was telling you about. So this is my mother's mom. And It's really interesting because I think that she did a lot of work to try to assimilate her family into white culture,
Mm.
right? She didn't speak Spanish very much. She just like kind of, she wanted to, as a way of like a class mobility kind of thing, like kind of be white, you know? And so she had this that about her where she like had this really kind of like high opinion of herself. And when I would sometimes ask my family like where in Mexico are you from, they'd be like we're from Texas. And I'm like, yeah, but I know that you're like Texas, but she had these like clearly like many Catholic people sort of, and this is in no way an insult, but like sort of magical thinking things. So again, the washing money in the sink, that was the thing. Like she dealt in cash. She was like a Shackley lady, which is like the Avon lady, but with vitamins. And so she would like kind of do direct sales, and she had a lot of cash always. So she would wash it to get off like just sort of like bad vibes, right? She had a dish of pennies she would keep on top of cabinets in the kitchen because it had something to do with like keeping your money up or like maintaining money, like those kinds of things.
Yes.
And I remember like when I was younger thinking she was just so weird. Like I didn't really, like I was not enamored by this. Like I was just like so crazy. But as I got older, I was just really kind of in awe of this kind of person she was, where she's a very pragmatic person in so many ways, but took these little rituals of hers like so seriously. They were very true,
Yes.
She also, like was a real believer in the ojo, like people were like witches and you're supposed to look at them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like so like we didn't wear anything, but like she'd like do something on my head, right? Like if I like looked in the wrong direction to some person at church who I wasn't supposed to look at, she would like do this.
Wow.
And I like didn't understand,
Mm-hmm.
So I just really, magical realism is a lot like that. Like we sort of infused, I don't want to say like superstitions or rituals, but like things that are real, like that's real,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the magical. I love the magical realism of the book, but also of the culture. And I know in Latinx culture that there's like the Mexican tree of life that explains a biblical story, but also death as the other part of life. I was wondering if there was any connection with the tree outside the Torres's house and just the role of this tree, because it felt like it was almost its own character, how much we refer to it and think about it and put letters in it. And I just wanted to know if there was any real significance between the two, or even just it being its own character.
Wow. I don't know if I have ever, I don't think so. I mean, not intentionally. Like I didn't think of it that way. But I did try, there's a lot, like clearly I, like with Rosa, I like nature being more than nature. Like she's, the old youngest sister thinks that she can talk to animals or is trying to communicate with animals on like a heart to heart level,
Yes. Which was so beautiful. I'm sorry to cut you. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I do have to go to that page because that is one of my favorite things that you've written. She just wanted to be able to hear things, and she wanted the creatures of this world to know they were being heard. That's all. When a squirrel sat up on the telephone wires, flicking its tail, Rosa didn't know what it was thinking, and she didn't know what it was thinking. If anything, she wanted him, the squirrel, to know that she was thinking of him. That was so, it was just really beautiful for me. So
Thanks. No, yeah. I mean, I like writing in all of my stories. I like writing I feel like I always have one character who's like, there's something like they have some, are they like some kind of little witch or something, and I never know. And so I never really kind of do, but it does end up that she's right about, she thinks that the hyena that has escaped from the zoo is her sister. It's like embodying the spirit of her sister. And so she goes out at night to try to find it, like fearlessly, like really thinking that it is her. No, I like Rosa and like kind of the way that she worked out as a character with like the dog that dies at the beginning and then everything that happens after that. But
yeah, she's wonderful. I was very curious about if there was a connection or something that you were trying to get through in the book that kind of highlighted a connection between community and like a family grieving, but a community grieving a loss. And just kind of talking about the different stages and how grief kind of looks after the passing of someone as important as Anna.
I think that when I was trying, so something that really like broke open the story, I was stuck on the story a lot. Like when I would explain it to people, I would say, so there's the ghost of the sister comes back and she's haunting the house. And the sisters are trying to figure out why, right? And then someone would be like, oh, well, why? And I'm like, I don't know. Like I could not figure out what the ghost wants, which I was like, that is like a major point of a ghost story. Is it like the ghost is after something? Like, and so like they're like, but what broke the story open is that maybe I couldn't figure out what Anna even wanted in her life, like when she was alive. That's hinted at, right? But it's told through different narrators, so we don't ever have her voice. But what I could do with all of the characters is determine what they wanted from her. And so I liked this idea of having this character who you don't actually, like, people have asked me, and like, what is Anna? What's Anna like? I'm like, we don't know anything. I don't know anything about her aside from what the characters say about her, because she is just a mix of like different characters. So yes, all her sisters are grieving, but they all are grieving because they want something out of this ghost that has come back, or this spirit has come back. They're like something in there that they're trying to get Anna basically to like fill a hole or like serve a purpose. And then there's also sort of the community aspect, is that a few chapters are narrated by these boys that live, well, not like this group of boys. One of them lives across the street and they all hang out at his house. So there's like a chorus of boys, and they also like want something different from Anna, and so this sense of grief is also in a lot of ways, I don't want to say selfish, but sort of, but self-serving, because you're like, why did they leave me? Why can't I, if she comes back, why won't she talk to me? Like Jessica is so upset because Jessica was obsessed with her sister, but her sister won't like manifest. Like Jessica like just wants the ghost of her sister to like talk to her, right? And she won't. And so this grief is just like all these characters sort of using, and even in life, Anna was just kind of used. She was just like stories are made up about her. And so I like this idea of their grief being in a lot of ways selfish or self-serving, which I guess like grief is, right? Because it is you, and you're wondering like, how am I going to live without this person? Or like, it's so much bound up in yourself, as in addition to the person that you've lost. But then you like make up stories about that person, or you inflate certain parts of their personality and don't think about the other things, because anyway, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You talk about Jessica's jealousy, and you mentioned this before, but I found it, very interesting the way that you describe her jealousy and how irrational she kind of sounded. But can you just talk about the feeling of jealousy of Jessica not being able to see or connect with Anna, but also, trying to cope?
I think, yeah. I mean, I think that Jessica is the way that she is because she doesn't know who she is.
Mm.
In a way that a lot of people don't know who they are. I mean, I think that she's sort of trying on different roles. And certainly I give her a job in the book where she like wears a uniform. Like she works at basically CVS pharmacy. It's not named, but it's like CVS. Mm-hmm. And so she like wears a little CVS polo and she like gets ready to go to work. But there's a sense that it's just so performative.
Mm.
Right. And then like all these other aspects of her performative. There's like good daughter is real performative to her. Like she is the one who is apologetic for their dad when their dad is clearly undeserving of a lot of sympathy that she gives him. So I just think that she's very angry and has a very strong personality.
Yeah.
Or she seems to have a very strong personality because she's really insecure. Right? And so much of that rage comes from insecurity. But yeah, she really was a great character to write. And I was just like, because I just knew exactly what she would do in every situation, which is like the wrong thing.
Yeah. So wonderful. Thank you so much for
spending
some of your day with us and talking about this wonderful book. Thank you for writing this book. Please stay safe. Good luck in your career. We'll be looking forward to everything that you write from now on. Thanks for being with us, Samantha.
Thank you, Roy. Thank you. Chicago.
Yes, come visit us when we can visit, when we can visit again. Again, Speak On It is a program series connecting teens and authors virtually to have a conversation about what speaks to us and inspires us to create. Join us as we welcome award-winning author Nicola Yoon to speak live on all things writing, creating, and geek out on books and more. Nicola is the author of Everything, Everything, The Sun is Also a Star, Meet Cute, as well as other anthologies. See you next week, and thank you for tuning in.